go ahead and introduce our speaker for the day, which is our wonderful Mayor Ralph. Mayor Ralph and I have the opportunity to meet on a monthly basis, and just this past week, we had the opportunity to do a tour of, we're in East Kent? No, we're in downtown.
Downtown in the West Hill. We still got East Hill to go.
We still got East Hill to go. So it's just a great opportunity to be able to meet with her on a monthly basis and talk about the things that are really happening in the city. One of those things, again, I can't talk about it more, is safety. And I definitely want you to know that we as a chamber are working on that. And this is a conversation that is not foreign to the mayor, to the police chief. This is a conversation that we keep going. It is important for us as a chamber that our businesses feel like they can grow and thrive here in the city. And part of that, beyond resources, is their safety. So without further ado, the woman who does not need an introduction, our mayor, Mayor Ralph.
Good afternoon, everybody. It is wonderful to see this room so full. I want to say thank you to Zenobia and her team at the Chamber for making this possible. And a quick round of introductions of my team. I'm trying to pick everybody out. I've got Chen Beer, our Public Works Director, Michelle Wilmot and Bill Ellis from Community and Economic Development, Chief Padilla in the room as well. So, for those of you that have heard me speak before, you know that I really like the question and answer, the more off the cuff. But I've got some notes today because I want to start out with just sort of a level set of where things are at in our economy and businesses in the city of Kent. And I don't want to get the numbers wrong because they're pretty impressive. We are growing. Kent is growing. Our business community is growing. Availability of space is growing. The space industry is growing. So I want to run through sort of high level some of those things. We'll talk about some of the things the city is doing as far as business development, education, and making sure that you all have workforces that are coming up to filling those jobs that are coming to the city. We'll talk about some new news or some maybe leftover news on things that are happening in some of our commercial spaces, and then we'll wrap up with a little bit of the legislative things that the city's been working on, and hopefully after all that we have time for questions. So bear with me while I read my notes here. The number of new commercial business licenses applied for in Kent in 2022 compared to 21 grew by 20.7%. So we have 20 more new business applications or business licenses in 22. That is a really promising sign. And those new businesses are bringing new jobs 50% higher than in 21 in 22. So we're bringing new companies, new businesses, and new employment. And that is a good thing for every level, right? We know that our business community, it's a symbiotic relationship. You can have a manufacturer, but the people that work there have to have a place to go have lunch. They have to have a place for their kids to go to daycare. All those things work together. So growth matters to all of us. Since 2020, 2,476,129 new building, new square footage of building has come up in the Kent Valley. 2.5 million square feet. That is really impressive, and that's growth that other places just aren't seeing. Value of that, anybody want to guess? It's about $200 million in value happening here. And then the next question, and we always get this, if you drive through the Industrial Valley in particular, there's always signs up, the brokerage companies say, space for lease. And I think that people translate it in that to meaning there's a lot of vacant space in the valley. 4%. That's just normal turnover. Those signs are really, I'm sorry if I'm telling on any of our brokerage friends or not, it's advertising, right? Because you drive by and you see that sign. Sorry, Marty. Don't mean to share that, to break, that secret. But I think it's reassuring to know that even though you're seeing those signs, 4% vacancy is really, really low. And that means that people are staying in Kent and they're coming to Kent because it's a good place to do business. Several years ago, we talked a lot about Rally the Valley. So that was an initiative that our economic and community development team took on, passed it through council, and it was really a re-envisioning of what the valley looks like. So think about 1990, tilt up building, warehouse, giant wall. You have absolutely no idea what's happening inside that space. Like you could drive through the valley and not have a clue who was here. Rally the Valley was really about reimagining those giant warehouses, making them flexible so that you could have a startup, advanced manufacturing, service, whatever it is in those spaces, and making those spaces human scale. Like, so when you stand next to it, you feel like it's a place that people belong. Because if you feel like people belong there, then our employees feel like they belong there, right? So making sure that there's outdoor amenities. Can you go out and have your lunch? Can you play basketball? That has all come to pass, and if you look at the new development on that former Boeing property, down between about 212th and say 196th, that's what Rally the Valley is. It's glass, it's color, it's human scale, outdoor amenities. It's one of the places that Zenobia and I went on the tour, and it's like, see how this feels? It feels like a place that people want to be, and it makes a difference. We are seeing cities like Vancouver and other West Coast cities now putting warehousing moratoriums in place because they understand the value of that flexible space and what it means to a community. And they're following our lead. So that is one of those places where Kent was really a trendsetter. It took a long time to get there. We had a lot of conversations with our developers, property owners. What does it mean for that space? And it's working. And it's drawing in companies like Stoke Space. They're one of our new-ish space companies that are doing really amazing things and bringing a lot of those high-tech, high-paying jobs into the valley. That's a perfect lead into sort of some of the things that are going on. You've all heard us talk about, the lunar rover was made in Kent. And it was. 50 plus years ago at that Boeing building, the lunar rover that's on the moon was developed and built here in Kent. But we have continued that space sector type of industry here. So we've got Blue Origin, which is our largest employer, 4,000 employees working at Blue Origin now. That is a lot of people. It's a lot of jobs, and they're jobs, everything from entry level up to rocket scientists. So that means that there's people in the valley that are spending their money. It means that they are looking for employees all the time. We also have Stoke Space and Starfish Space. They've received over $72 million in venture funding to those businesses that are located here in the Kent Valley. And all of that means that they need suppliers. It's that whole food chain of businesses, right? You've got one company, they need the supplies to build the things that they're building, they need the people that are trained to do those jobs, and that's all happening here. We also have companies, so we talked a little bit about the lunar rover, companies in Kent design parts of the space station, the Hubble telescope, all of those kinds of things. So we've got a long history, and over half of Washington's space jobs are located in the Kent Valley. That brings about $5 billion to our state's economy. That is 5 with a B. Kent is important. Kent is a place where things continue to happen, and we're going to continue to make them happen. A couple little teasers on property outside the Industrial Valley. So everybody ever wonder what's going on at Top Foods? Okay. Those of you that have been around long enough to know that 10 years ago it was a Top Foods. The frying pan art on the side of it that still is like, why are there frying pans on the side of this building? That building sold. We have a new company coming in, and they're going to be dividing it up into what we think is going to be 3 spaces. The one that I can share with you is Harbor Freight is moving up there into that space. So those of you that need tools and projects and things, check out Harbor Freight. I know my family spends a fair amount of time there, so excited about that on the East Hill. Another retail space, and then we are hoping that that 3rd space is going to be a grocer. And I'm just going to leave that little teaser out there until we have more information, but we're very, very excited that after all this time, that space has been reactivated. Another one of those spaces that people ask about all the time, the old Kmart building. So that's been torn down for a little while. We're excited about that. But Kaiser Permanente bought it. Pre-pandemic had plans for a clinic. Think about the shutdown, what that meant for healthcare, people sort of changing the way they get healthcare. We have been sort of poking at them, what's going on, and we are hopeful that this spring they'll be in for permits to build that clinic, and that is going to be a huge revitalization to that area. And it will complement and allow us to continue the Meet Me on Meeker projects that we've got going. So if you've driven down Meeker, broader sidewalks, the benches, the lighting, all of the more pedestrian friendly, that is going to continue up there past that would be the north edge of the Kmart property where the fast food row is there, working with the school district on getting that redeveloped and then coming into downtown. So pretty excited about all of that. So that's a lot about big business, big spaces, all of that, but I don't want anybody to think that we are not just as focused on our small business and our nonprofits in the city of Kent. We continue to leverage every resource we have to provide those supports, everything from supporting our nonprofits that are doing the education work up through those startup businesses that are going to take the leap of faith and want to be one of those businesses we talk about next year as having all the employees and doing the great thing. So we were able to, through our ARPA funding, the American Rescue Plan money that came to cities back during COVID, we were able to focus a lot of that money on business development and business support. So we established what we call a Flex Fund, and it's a partnership with our Community Development Financial Institutions, CDFIs. And it provides low interest rate money to businesses that might not necessarily have access to traditional capital for whatever the reason is, right? We want to make sure that people that have been locked out of that traditional market have access to the money. 26 loans have been funded, 15 are still in the pipeline. 84.6 of them that have received that, companies that have received that funding identify as being diverse ownership. It is a beautiful number in the city of Kent when we can see things like 86% of the folks owning those businesses and accessing that capital are from our diverse community. So far, $2.5 million in loans were closed in the city of Kent, and that percentage of closing of applications is nearly twice that of New York City or other places. So we are leading the nation in supporting our small business. That is a program, and look at Bill and Michelle from Economic Development that they came and said, we should put money into this. And it was one of those concepts that you start thinking, like, does the government do lending? How does that work? What does it look like for a city? But the need was there, and we figured out a way, and that Flex Fund has been extremely, extremely successful. We also located $225,000 to our community business navigators. So folks that are in the community that can help our businesses work through systems, whatever they need, financing, permitting, that kind of thing. Very proud to say we partnered with the Chamber on that. So Zenobia is a great key to getting you all connected to the resources that are out there. There's a lot of resources. It's just, how do you know about it, right? How do you connect as a business owner, as a nonprofit with all of those things? And so the community connector, so we've got the Chamber, and we're also really proud to partner with the Indian American Community Services, IACS. Again, acronyms feel like they just sort of roll off the tongue. To do that work, to reach into our communities and make sure that our businesses are being supported. So more to come on that. We've also put $400,000 into a BIPOC Business Accelerator program, working with Business Impact Northwest. I saw Dominique here. Making sure, again, that our BIPOC businesses have access to the resources and the ability to start out on a stable foundation to be successful here in our community. $600,000 in childcare expansion to assist parents so they can re-enter the workforce. How many of you are having workforce issues? I feel like it's an across the board thing, right? And a lot of times it has to do with access to childcare, right? When you have had parents that were staying home during the pandemic, kids' schools are different, everything has changed, and we need to make sure that we're supporting those childcare providers. $50,000 to a new pre-apprenticeship program. Love a new, teaching folks how to learn a trade, like learning what different trades there are, how to explore that, and then connecting them with those job opportunities after that. And then $600,000 to work with the Kent School District to align STEM education, curriculum planning, and implementation. We know, and we have heard from our businesses in the Valley, they need an educated workforce. Sometimes that means a certificate. Sometimes that means a 2-year degree, and sometimes it means an advanced degree. But I mean, I don't think it's a secret. We've spent a lot of time saying, oh, that 4-year degree is the only thing that matters. It's not the only thing that matters at all. And our employers are recognizing that. And as a community, we are recognizing that, and that's part of what the city of Kent is doing to support. Here's agreeing with that. You know, it matters. I mean, we all know that kid that's like, another 4 years doesn't make any sense to me. Super smart, super motivated, but not knowing what their options are. And so really want to make sure that we're helping our kids and our adults that are looking for a change to connect with those educational opportunities. And we have a lot of them in Kent. Green River, Renton Technical, Highline, all of these groups, they're all here to support anybody that wants to learn and enter into that workforce. So we're grateful as a city to be able to help with that. Project Feast is another one of those places, right? Helping folks connect to some kind of industry entrepreneurship, specifically our refugee and immigrant community. Project Feast has been downtown Kent for a long time. And we were able to provide them with $160,000 to build capacity for their culinary training program. All about keeping that workforce going and figuring out ways for people to engage in it. So that's sort of my top to bottom, in between overview, but we also have some fun things going on. So I don't know if anybody's been downtown, you could probably see it from here. We have a brand new park going in, and it's a rebuild of Kherson Park. Was originally named after a former sister city in the Ukraine that has been kind of sitting vacant, right? There was a ping pong table there. Cindy and I were supposed to have a ping pong date at some point. I don't know what happened. But we've got a space park coming in. So there's a lunar lander that's going to be there, the rover, a space, like you can send somebody into space from the control module. We've got some great partners that are helping technology come to life in that park. There'll be an app that kids can scan a QR code and can have this whole sort of virtual reality thing going on. The idea behind that is it's going to be a fun place to play, but sparking the imagination of those kids to think, you know what, I could go to the moon someday. I could be the person that builds this and pilots it and what all of those things. So it's really about inspiring that next generation of workforce. So May is going to be the grand opening of that park. Stay tuned to our social media. We'll be sending out information. Do we announce a date yet, Michelle, or are we still tentative? Okay. So we're going to keep it a secret until we're ready, but keep an eye out for it. Would love to have you come down and help us celebrate that new park. I talked a little bit about work we're doing with other organizations that are helping train our students up. This is why I don't like notes, guys. I hate my pages here. But I want to call them out, and it's a whole series of acronyms: AJAC, CAMPS, WIM, FIRST, SPIN. So AJAC is our Aerospace Joint Apprenticeship Training Program that is here in the Kent Valley. CAMPS, Centers for Advanced Manufacturing. WIM, Women in Manufacturing, FIRST Robotics, and SPIN is STEM Paths Innovation Network. All organizations that are working to inspire and train our youth that the city is supporting through a variety of ways. So really proud of that work. And it feeds into everything that you all are doing, right? A workforce is what it takes to run a business. Without that, you can't have it. So we want to make sure that we're building that here in the city of Kent. So supporting you at that level, supporting you there at the real estate level, making sure that there's opportunity for your businesses and that you can be here and thrive in the city of Kent. That's the end of the formal, all of the data parts. Before we go into question and answers, I want to talk a little bit sort of about what's going on in the legislative session. Zenobia hit on it a little bit. Public safety is top of mind for everyone. It's top of mind for us in the city as well. I can tell you in the first half of this very, very, very long session, we have spent a ton of time working, being in Olympia, testifying on bills, trying to help the legislature help us. So the two primary focuses that we've had this session We won the streamlined sales tax thing a couple years ago. Thank you for all your support in that to make sure that that sales tax is balanced and we get that money for a couple more years. But we've been really focused on both housing and public safety. So housing front first. The legislature is responding to, and rightfully so, a housing crisis. Like, we just don't have enough housing. The problem that we have as a city, and a lot of other cities do, is the way that it's being addressed is a one-size-fits-all model. And I don't know about you, but very, very rarely does one size fit all. We can pretend, but it just doesn't. So what housing looks like, and I'll use my friend Mayor Bernie up in Redmond, what housing looks like and what they need in Redmond is very different than what it looks like and what we need here in Kent. So one of the bills that's we've been working a lot on is House Bill 1110, and what it says is that in about 89% of the single-family lots in the city of Kent, they would now be able to put 6 units on that one piece of property. So, a street that has 10 houses on it now could potentially have 60. So, we don't plan for that kind of expansion in any area. Sewer capacity, that's 59 more toilets flushing, water capacity, power, the street infrastructure. The bill says, city, you have to create the zoning, but it doesn't talk about how we get there for all the things that it takes to support. It's no additional money for public safety. So, and our biggest fear with this, and this is what makes us so different than someplace like Redmond or Bellevue, Kent still has, and I know that this is relative, has a lot of what we call naturally occurring affordable housing. It is still a place where people can enter into the housing market. That also means that those properties are the easiest and most inexpensive way for a developer to come in, eliminate that naturally occurring affordable housing, and put in 6 townhomes. Okay? That changes the face of a community. And if we're doing this because we need to give people access to housing, it's counter to that mission. So Kent has been very clear about why we have concerns. We have been planning and building for density in places that it makes sense for decades. If you look around downtown, you can see Dwell, and you can see Platform, and you can see Madison. Density makes sense downtown. Access to heavy rail, major transit, all of those kinds of things. Up in the middle of the East Hill and the West Hill, transit's not available. You gotta still get down into the valley. So we've been focusing all of our planning on this, and this bill would basically just sort of tear all that planning up and say, you get to start over again. So we're pretty concerned about that. Supportive of the growth. So I don't want anybody to go out and put on their social media, Mayor Ralph said not in my backyard. I did not say that. We all have to do our part, but we have to do it in a way that makes sense for our cities. Other things like a lot of other cities have really strong HOAs, and there's a lot of question about if the HOA doesn't allow for that additional development, does that mean that neighborhood's excluded? So then does that disadvantage our neighborhoods in our city that don't have HOAs, which is a lot of them. So it's an equity thing, right? And that continues to be the theme for us in the city. There's some bills around accessory dwelling units, ADUs, and we're weighing in on those. We are on our own and have been for quite some time working on expanding the availability of people to put a mother-in-law in your backyard. But we've seen things like, not physically put a mother-in-law in your backyard. I got that after I said that. But making sure that people have options, right? Because that is a very viable form of housing. But 3 in a backyard, does that make sense? It doesn't. So trying to make sure that what's coming out of the legislature makes sense for us. Moving over to public safety. So we have all seen the changes and the impacts of our public safety reform in the state of Washington in the last couple of years. I have not met a single person who has not seen what that has looked like. I will continue to say, and I think the chief will back me up on this, we 100% supported the need for reform. There were places that policing needed to change. And honestly, Kent was doing a lot of them. What we had is this pendulum swing, right? We went from, if this is bad, then this must be amazing. Where we are is not amazing. 49,000 cars stolen in the state of Washington last year. That's not amazing. That's a problem. But when you give someone who's inclined to steal a car the ability to do that with almost no repercussions, like, please steal that car and we're not going to come after you, this is what we get. So we were working on that pursuit bill, trying to make it a little more reasonable. And under the knowing that every police department in the state has a pursuit policy. It's a tongue twister. They don't pursue lightly. It's not like, oh, it's 4 o'clock and I'm going to go flying through a school zone at 100 miles an hour. But the messaging has been, we're not coming after you, and the bad guys know that. And then what we're seeing is those stolen cars being used in the commission of crime, being backed into the windows of a small retail business. And then it's $25,000 to fix the front of that business, if you can get the glass, right? That's a problem. So we have to fix that. I have been pretty vocal about my frustration with the legislature's unwillingness to do those kinds of things. There is another bill that came up sort of late in the game, and we're now hoping we can get to come back next year, that would have been funding for law enforcement. We've taken 0.1% of existing sales tax, so not a new tax, and give it to cities to hire police officers. We are, in the state of Washington, number 51 in staffing in police departments. So we are behind everybody and the District of Columbia in staffing in the police departments across the state. This bill would have gotten us to maybe middle, wouldn't have gotten us over the top, but it would have meant enough money to the city of Kent to hire 20 or so officers. That would have been a game changer for our police department. The Senate passed it out of committee and then failed to schedule it for a hearing in the next step of the process. And the House had a public hearing out of committee and then just chose to not vote on it. It just literally went away. The committee hearing, both Chief and I were in Olympia testifying for that, sat there for 3 hours waiting our turn to testify, 60 seconds. There were 50 plus jurisdictions around the state signed in support, and they wouldn't even bring it for a vote. It's not okay. So we're gonna keep working, and I will be back working with Zenobia next year to rally all of you that are in support of that to help us get that funding to help you keep your community safe. So those are a couple of the high-level pieces of legislation that we're focused on. Bright spot, really excited. Working through the process, we brought forward a street racing bill, and that is making it through. So that would give us the ability to impound someone's car for 72 hours if they're caught street racing, and then the second time after they're convicted, they would have to forfeit that vehicle. So we're really trying to eliminate the street racing in the valley and these big intersection takeovers that are happening in our neighborhoods. So excited about that. I think that's it for sort of all of the information. Chief.
Mayor, did you want to touch on the Blake fix?
Oh, I don't even know how I could forget that. Sorry. Blake is the decision that came out of the Supreme Court a couple of years ago that the semantics everybody argues over, that essentially legalized possession of drugs. It meant that if an officer comes in contact with you because you're using fentanyl in the park, they had to offer you treatment. Like, would you like to go to treatment? How do you think that works out? Okay. They do that twice, and then somehow track that that's been offered twice. And then on the third contact, it becomes a misdemeanor. So it used to be a felony, and that meant we could get people into the justice system and connect them with services, right? Drug court. King County has a very strong drug court and diversion program. But when there is no more incentive, you see what we're all experiencing every day. So the legislature did what they call the Blake fix. It was for 1 year. It was that you have to make 3 contacts. I don't know a city in the state that has had any success in that before anything could go through. So what we're hoping to see now is that officers will be able to arrest for possession. They then will go in front of a judge and have the opportunity to choose treatment. So if they go to treatment, then the court process stops. If they fail treatment, then the court process would restart. If they choose not to go to treatment, then it would be processed like any other misdemeanor does. So up to 364 days in jail. That is a better spot than where we are now. And if the legislature doesn't do anything before the end of the session, then it fully legalizes everything. And that's not mixing words. It's just, you can smoke fentanyl in the park and it'll be fine. So the interim fix that we have here in Kent, that we were able to work with the city council to get passed at the end of last year, is use in public is not legal. So we can't do anything about the possession, but if you are using in a public space, our officers have the right to make contact with you, and then again, hoping to get you in front of a judge and encourage somebody to get the treatment they need. The end goal is the treatment. It's not putting people away, but you got to have some sort of strong encouragement. So we're tracking on that very closely and following that bill as well. Thanks, Chief. I knew there was one more thing. All right, so as you can, lots of good things going on in the city, lots of challenges. We are up for the challenge. We are going to keep fighting every single day to take care of our businesses, our residents, making sure our kids are taken care of, and excited to have that opportunity and excited that there are good things happening. So with that, we're going to open it up for questions. Yes, sir.
My name is Raj, and first of all, thank you for your service, and thank you for thank you to the chief and the rest of the team. I own and operate a couple of companies, and our main company is Tech Consulting. We do IT for businesses, and we've been in Kent for almost 10 years. And we purchased our own building in 2018, remodeled, moved in. Unfortunately, we've had several issues with homelessness, crime. I have my insurance person right here.
Don't bring him up to this.
Actually, somebody drove right through his brand new gate.
Oh.
Well, so a couple things. One is the crime that is pretty much all related to homelessness over the last 3 years, especially during COVID. I think we've spent over $22,000 in fixing, paying to farmers, deductibles, all that, and having security cameras and all this. Much to no avail, no difference. And then the second question or second concern I have is the street that we're on. You talked about speeding. So we have lots of people, lots of kids that are speeding at night. And that over the last 2 years, they've run into our gate twice. And over the last 4 years, they've run into our fencing 4 times. So each time it's a $5,000 deductible, and it's a $3,000 fix. I'm wondering if there's going to be any relief from that and what your plans are.
So that's a tough question. The city doesn't have funding to do things like pay deductibles. So I wish we had the capacity or some sort of a funding source. We can work on things like traffic safety and work on things like the crime. I would ask if you could send me an email with your address, and I will circle up with Chad, our public works director, in the back. We do have different traffic calming options that are available, and we'll take a look at the area, the number of accidents, that kind of thing, and see if there's something we can do on that front.
I have worked with the city council, and they did come out and put, I don't know what they're called, the speed detectors or whatever, but that, I understand working with the city, things could take a long time.
We don't like that.
Yeah. But as a business owner, it is discouraging when these things keep happening over and over again. And from my perspective,
like there's something clearly that can be done. But yeah, I'll shut up.
Yeah, no, so the traffic, so that's the first step, so let's figure out what the second step is, right? We tried that, it doesn't sound like it's working, we wanna figure out what that next step is on the traffic side. On the public safety side, so it is not a secret that we have a pretty significant homeless issue. And it's here for a variety of reasons. I will tell you, I think one of the reasons why it's grown is our drug laws are allowing people, and this is what I am hearing directly from people that are living in camps. Not all homelessness is related to drugs. We've got mental health issues, and then sometimes it just really is about availability. So if it's about availability, we're getting folks into housing. We can connect them with the services they need. Until we are given tools by the state and our courts to do anything different, I can tell you we're doing what we're allowed to do. So there was a Ninth Circuit Court ruling called Martin v. Boise that basically gave people the right to establish a home in public spaces. So that's a problem, right? It's not, first of all, it's not compassionate. People shouldn't be living in a wetland. They shouldn't be living in a park. They should be living in some kind of shelter. So we at the city, in an effort to address this, again, about the same time towards the end of last year, implemented some new ordinances around allowing our police officers to get people out of those critical areas. And the goal is connection with services. So we haven't had our first report out. It's only been in effect for about 3 months, but we're working on it. So we're running that lane. Continue to work with the King County Regional Homeless Authority, and then just simply having the ability to have consequences for people is one of our biggest challenges. Police Department, Chief, I want to come up and talk a little bit about staffing. I feel like this is a good place to inject this conversation about what we're doing. We used to have a downtown bike unit. We're bringing that back. It's a slow process, but want to have you hear directly from the chief.
I wore my vest.
We go out places, he gets the best, and I never do. I don't understand that.
All right, good afternoon, everybody.
One real add-on to that, Mayor did respond. We just started our crisis co-responder program. So we talked about it a couple of years ago. We wanted the funding for it. It's alive and well. So now I've got a nurse, I've got a pathway counselor out there. When our officers get in contact with someone who's living on the street, needs services, we have direct resources to that. That just started in January. So we're not even a month and a half into it. So that's going to help a little. So on the staffing, I've been saying this a little while. I've got great news on staffing. We have filled all of our vacancies in the police department for police officers. So that was a huge task, and it's all the credit in the world to support from our city leadership. We made sure that we had the right incentives, that we were the highest paid police department in the state, and that we literally plucked really good officers from other departments and across the region. A bunch of new officers, very talented young people who scare me to death because they're like 23. And they're coming into the profession, but counter to what you hear out there are still really good people who want to do this important work, and they're coming. The problem is, it takes us about a year and a quarter to get them trained. So you can't do anything for you right now. They can't even take your theft report. We've had a major issue in terms of getting funding for the State Police Academy. It's currently a 10-month wait to get someone to the academy. And we have been fighting for money in the legislature for that as well. There's a couple of bills before this session. We're hoping we'll pass that will expand capacity. So fingers crossed in that regard. So what we literally do is we hire them, we hold on to them, because if we don't hire them right away, somebody's going to. And we do what we can to get them preloaded for the academy, but it takes that long. So good news on that. But you'll remember, and I said this before this very group at a meeting prior, that still puts Kent near the bottom in terms of per capita police funding. Okay, so we still have a road in front of us. I still think
We should be, I know, you look at all the metrics, whether you go by call volume, whether you go by per capita, you go by emergency incident rates, our officers are handling more calls more often than pretty much anyone else in the region. And when that's occurring, you have a shortened staff to still overcome. Remember, a year and a half ago, I was telling you about our 31% departure of law enforcement officers in our city. So we've overcome that with some hard work and some support. It's been awesome. But that means I have to make us so that we're focusing on what the top priority is. And the top priority, in addition to what's going on in your businesses, is the violent crime, right? So the violent crime is where I put everybody, because we need to cover 911 calls, we need to respond to shootings and homicides, and that is where we have to put resources. Who here remembers when we had biking? Yeah, that's coming back. But that was one of the first units I had to put out of the special agent and put under control. Our neighborhood response team, crime fighting team, that went away. Half of our community education unit went away. Lots of issues where these community-based programs that directly impact small businesses had to go away, so we need to be able to cover 911 calls. And we are setting records in terms of calls for service and all that. So it's a really big deal. But the good news is we've got officers. Once I get them trained, you're going to see those units come back. And I have a couple ideas of some other community-based preventative units that we'll be rolling out. I hate to even say that because I'm probably talking 2024 before that's reality. So there's the good news. We filled our vacancies. Our staffing, police staffing is stable, but we do need to grow. So.
Thanks, Chief.
I have a question for the chief real quick. Can we just talk a little bit about what are the options for businesses who have people who are congregated on their property? What's their right? What can they do?
So if they're on your private property, you don't want them there. As business owners, managers, what have you, whoever you delegate to be the authority, you have the authority by law to have them leave. And if they refuse to leave, they're committing the crime of trespassing. Okay? Now, that's not to say that we go out and make a lot of trespassing arrests, but for a while, when you called for trespassing, quite honestly, that went into a queue. And it probably sat, in the last year and a half, probably sat for 2 hours because of the staffing issue, right? Remember what I said, where was I putting all my resources? Violent crime. We are coming out of that. I want you to call. I want you, if you can't remember the long non-emergency number, call 911. Okay, and I want you to call and we want to respond. My message, my boss's message is we're going to get back to the services that we wanted to have all along that have been muted for a very good reason. Kent PD, the city of Kent's going to run your lap. You're going to do the things we can do, and you're going to start seeing us push the envelope with getting back out. I spoke to my leadership group about 3 weeks ago, and the message is I want us to be mindful of the opportunities to take intervention steps to help our community. Mindful within the new rules that are upon us and the huge restrictions on law enforcement still to do what we need to do. But there are things we can do, and I want to push that. We're going to push the envelope. We're going to move back towards what I like to call relentless pursuit, okay, of helping everybody here. So that's coming. I feel like a broken record, but please be patient. It is coming. There's good news. This is probably the first time in 3 years I've been able to come in and say, I'm pretty optimistic about where we're going. So but be patient. I know we're not showing up. I know calls are waiting forever. I know your businesses are getting broken into multiple times. If you're wondering why they're using vehicles to smash in the fences, because when I show up, when they leave, I have to watch them drive away. That's state law. We rung the bell on that 2 years ago when this law was being proposed. It's here. The other thing that's here today, if I could, there's a bill that's proposed that would restrict the ability to pull people over traffic stops and limit it to home movement violations. It sounds like a really great idea, and I'm going to tell you, it's going to result in more open lawlessness and disregard for the law. My ask is if they're going to make the laws unenforceable, take them off the books. Because I'm not sure what the message is to say this is illegal, but police, we don't want you to do anything about it. It's not a good message. And the end result is you will see worse driving on the streets that you're currently seeing. So, I will edit sorry.
Thank you. That traffic stop law is very concerning for a variety of reasons. So we've seen the number of traffic accidents go up exponentially in the last couple of years. And it's that whole idea of, you can't stop me. I mean, let's be honest, we all follow rules because there's going to be some sort of consequence if we don't. And when you eliminate the consequence, the rule doesn't seem so important anymore. And I'm very concerned with the traffic stop bill in particular. If you've got drivers out there that know that they can't be pulled over for the small bad behavior, what does that mean for the big bad behavior? And the reality is traffic stops stop a lot of really bad people. Drugs, guns, that kind of stuff. And when we lose that ability, it's going to have a pretty negative impact. And 100% get the intent. Right? What we saw happen in Tennessee, not okay. But let's talk about what caused that and not try and find some easy fix. We'll just throw this on and we'll make so no traffic stop ever happens. That doesn't solve the problem. That doesn't solve what happened in Tennessee. So figuring out how we get back to sort of that common sense, how do we work together? It's another bill that's extremely disturbing to me, given the number of car pedestrian accidents that we see around. Trying to eliminate jaywalking laws in the state of Washington. Again, we don't write jaywalking tickets. Our officers are out doing their thing, taking care of the really big stuff. But if you send the message that says, please run across Pack Highway all 6 lanes, I don't know what we think is going to happen. Because people follow rules, but when you have no more rules, they don't have anything to follow. So that's the kind of stuff that we're working on. We're trying to use to keep our community safe. I taught my kids, right? It's against the law to run across not at the crosswalk. Well, now I can say, please go. We don't do that to people that we care about. So there's my soapbox on the little things that matter. But other questions?
Okay, I got 2 things. Chief, I know you real well. But we had 2 fires in the library parking lot last week alone. 10 people sit there every single morning after the house. We found trespassing you on out, not just on my house. People multiple times. And it's multiple times we're non-trespassing the same people over and over. With light control, great idea. Will they be able to do a sweep downtown in the mornings, possibly by 6 in the morning, just to keep on?
Yes, and I'm not going to call it a sweep because that's not what we're doing. I'll be careful about that. Having the bike unit come through and be a presence will do 2 major things. Before I had to shut them down, our bike unit was the major tool in engaging services with those who are out here needing them. You guys have heard me rant about we'll go 10, 15 times and get contact with someone, and a lot of times they don't take the services, but we're going to keep trying. The second part of that is now we will be able to, in public spaces, encourage them to move along, right? The city enacted an ordinance that gives us the tools. We're not looking to put people in jail, and part of this issue is we're trying to be very cognizant and mindful of not criminalizing homelessness, right? Because let's face it, they're trespassing. There's nowhere for them to go that they want to go to, right? And so that means the jail. And I don't think that's a good alternative. So we reserve that for what I'll call the repeat chronic offenders who won't cooperate and follow along. So we balance out accountability, service, and compassion. But I will tell you, my direction to my officers is that if they're making a physical arrest, there should be some pretty good justification for it, not just I showed up today and felt like it. So these resources are important. I am an old school cop, 31 years, and I will tell you what I want to provide for you, what the mayor wants to provide for you, is a visible presence that makes it feel and seem safe for intent. The only time you see my officers generally I know they go to Starbucks and stuff, so. But if you watch, and I sit right there in headquarters, when you see our officers, it's usually them hanging somewhere, lights and silence. That's the condition. The laws, the conditions of what we're doing put us in a very reactive state, and I'm fighting tooth and nail to get back to a preventative state of law enforcement. So be patient, John. We'll get up. So, question in the back.
Yeah, is there a program that you kind of like send some mental health professional to kind of talk to the people? I think I was talking.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's our co-responder model. And the legislature a couple of years ago, something we were very supportive of, enacted as called Bill 1590. And it allowed cities to take that 1/10 of the 1% sales tax, and it goes towards exactly that, both homeless housing, shelter, and then services. And the city of Kent, what we chose to do with that money is fund this co-responder model. So we're working in partnership with the fire department, and there's mental health providers, case managers, nurses that are out. They're out now all day long making contact with folks. They're a resource to our police officers. In day one, we already had our officers calling them and saying, hey, I think this person fits this FD Cares model is what it's called. And we're making those connections. And then an officer at night that comes into contact with somebody can put a ticket in. And when they come back in the morning, they're like, I need to follow up with this person. And that's the whole goal, right? Is that taking law enforcement out of the places like the case manager role and putting in case managers. And that funding has allowed us to stand that program up. We're really excited about it. Has only started in the last couple of weeks, so I don't have any data to report out. But next time when we come back next year, we'll be able to tell you exactly how that program is working. Yes.
Beyond everything you've already said, what keeps you up at night, and how can nonprofits play a role in partnering with you to provide the services that you're trying to provide to them?
So the question was, what keeps me up at night, and how can nonprofits play a role in providing those services? Okay, so two parts. What keeps me up at night is honestly right now community safety, right? How are we taking care of our community? And I will tell you, this is not the only reason, but it's personal. I live here. My kids live here. My kids are victims of crime. So I feel like as your mom, I'm not taking care of you, and as your mayor, I'm not taking care of you. That's what keeps me up at night, is wanting to keep my community safe. I think that there is a beautiful tie there with nonprofits, because we've got nonprofits that provide all of the services, right? How do we prevent the crime from happening? How do we prevent the person that's committing the crime from falling into whatever is driving them? So that's where we partner. Youth development, we partner on education, and we partner on the other side on if once we've got somebody that's sort of involved and that's become their life, how do we restore them? How do we get them back to being for themselves, for their family, and for their larger community, being a part of something? So I think it's all about partnerships, and the city cannot do it by ourselves. Other questions? We're just about out of time. Okay. Anybody else?
Is there
a model? I'm an NPR fan, so I listen to different things like with Eugene, Oregon, or someplace in Salt Lake City, that with homelessness, with the mental health, the fire department, is there a model that seems to be fit, and is there because it's more or less like a clearinghouse for nonprofits to do that doesn't all end up on you or one department that can help sort through things instead of having 20 nonprofits doing everything on their own, or like a clearinghouse or anything.
Very good question. So the first one is, yes, there are models all around the country. The Eugene, Oregon model is called Cahoots, something similar to what we're doing. The difference is, and I don't mean this in a sarcastic way, Washington handles things differently than any other state in the country. But we're super excited to be on the leading edge of fill in the blank. And sometimes that's good. And sometimes we end up right where we're at. So we absolutely are always looking at best practices and things that are working around the country and taking the pieces of that fit within the laws that we have here. The clearinghouse idea, so Kent Community Foundation did a really amazing job of bringing a lot of our nonprofits together during the pandemic to do exactly what you're talking about. They have a Tuesday call where everybody's talking about capacity and what they're doing, and if I can provide this service and you can provide that service. City also did a meeting last year of our nonprofits to just help connect people. So it's something we're still focused on and trying to figure out exactly how to get everybody to the table. And making sure that every one of our nonprofits know that it isn't about taking over. This group doesn't want to take over your work, but there's nothing in this realm that any one agency can do together. So continue to focus on that. Other questions?
Yeah, Dana, could you please update us on the Nathan property and negotiations with Avenue 55?
Avenue 55. Bill Ellis.
Hi, Steve. We're still working to strengthen the signature of the nonprofits that we had talked about when the proposal was made to council. And we're looking at a variety of ways to boost their signature, so to speak, their ability to pay to do construction. That's been one of the key points right now with talking to them. They're working on some new site planning, and obviously the macroeconomic picture has been funny from a finance position the last 6 to 7 months with interest rates. So I think they're recalibrating. I think that's about what I'm able to say right now in this meeting.
I think it's stay tuned. There will be news coming. We're working on it. So the Nathan property is a piece of property that the city owns that's over here just west of City Hall. When you come up Meeker under 167 on that south side, big vacant lot. You can see it from the freeway, you see it from Willis. Working with developer Avenue 55 on what it looks like to do some sort of combination of manufacturing technology type commercial space and align that with an education space. So think about that partnership again, about letting kids see what they're studying, how it plays into a career, but making sure that we can sort of align those two uses. And that's been the vision for the last little while, and we're making progress. Other questions?
I have one.
Yeah.
We managed to develop apartments right behind you, and with so many different apartment communities coming to Kent, would there be any kind of like police initiative to kind of work with the property managers on crime issues within those communities?
Yes, and it already exists. So it's housed in our neighborhood response team, which has been dismantled, and we're building back up. We've got one neighborhood response guy, but we have a variety of different things we can work with you on, as far as everything from like, how are you paying attention to who you're renting to crime response? The places where we don't have any jurisdiction are obviously around like eviction. That's a state with a county overlay. So, but yes, if you're having issues, shoot me an email and I will get you in contact with the right place. Chief and I just had a meeting last week with the King County Housing Authority about some of their complexes that are here in Kent, some of the issues that they're facing, trying to find some out-of-the-box partnerships, because people want to feel safe and they deserve to feel safe. So want to be the best partner we can.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, that brings us right up to 1 o'clock. I want to say thank you to each and every one of you for your investment in our community. It matters. It makes us who we are. This is when I say we are Kent, this is what I mean, right? How do we do this together? And I will always stand up here and be honest with you and tell you, there are things that are not like they should be. But I will also always be able to tell you that we are working and we are trying to navigate, figure out what our lane is, and whether that's working with our legislative partners to make sure that what's happening in Olympia has not negative impacts on us, but positive impacts, working with our nonprofits, working with our businesses, working with the chamber, because we can't do this alone, but I will always be honest about that. Thank you all.